name is Ann Morgan. I am the Director of Federal here at Code42. So I appreciate your time, the opportunity to spend some time to learn about Code42 and how we fit into the zero trust model. So let me share my screen. Let's see if this works. How are we doing? Looking good. Awesome.
Good.
Okay, so let me continue with some quick introductions. I'm going to have Keith Garrett, who's our senior systems engineer, do the demo today, and John Schimmelfennig, also known as Shimmy for short. He's our director of strategic partnerships, and he will be discussing the ecosystem partners. So let me roll into our agenda. We're going to talk very high level about the insider risk problem, the applicable use cases, our differentiators. We'll get into the demo with Keith, and then again, Shimmy will end our demo with talking about the ecosystem partners that we have. Okay, all right. So our solution is called Incydr Gov. This is specifically designed for federal. We are FedRAMP moderate authorized through sponsorship from the Department of Energy, which we received December 2020, so just a little over a year ago. Incydr Gov offers a modern approach to DLP. We are considered a next generation DLP solution, which speeds the time that it takes to detect and respond to data risk caused by insiders. Let me take a moment to define the problem that we solve. Code42 solves the data protection problem by focusing on protecting all data and all users from everyday exfiltration risks, no matter what their intent is. Authorized users can make mistakes, people make mistakes. So rather than viewing the problem from just that insider threat lens, which really just narrows it down to the malicious user, we're taking a broader insider risk management approach, which allows you to protect all data, all users from everyday exfiltration risks, no matter what their intent is. All right, some statistics. The reality of insider risk can be validated through statistics. 89% of CISOs believe this collaborative, this fast-paced, we're all working remote, we're moving to the cloud, has really created a greater risk for organizations. 66% of data breaches involve an insider, and 69% of organizations breached by an insider threat had a traditional DLP solution in place. So, you know, traditional DLP doesn't always work. The majority of organizations have a DLP. A lot of them we find are just sitting in monitor mode. It's hard to it's resource intensive. It's hard to manage. There's lots of policies. So we come at it from a modern approach to DLP. We're solving that data protection problem in the new reality of how people work today. Our architecture is simple. It's lightweight. We are not using the demo lab since we are FedRAMP moderate. We only have a SaaS offering. There is no on-prem offering, and we're hosted in AWS US East. We have a lightweight agent for Mac, Windows, and Linux. It's going to reside on that endpoint, and it's monitoring file movement. It is looking for files that are being exfiltrated to untrusted or unsanctioned locations. It takes this rich data of that event, puts it into our FedRAMP SaaS environment. We have what we call our risk exposure dashboard, which we will Keith will demo here in just a minute. That's where we correlate the file, the vector, the user. We're going to bring in lenses to help fine tune what's happening. We also have insider risk indicators. And we're correlating and searching and giving you that visibility of where data has moved to, again, an unsanctioned or untrusted location. And then finally, APIs. So, being able to plug into seamlessly into the zero trust architecture from an API perspective, all of the other tools that you have, your SIM, your SOAR, your IAM, your ITSM. All right, wanted to address the use cases. We fall into use cases 1 through 4, and we're also saying we fall into use case 5 because we have a feature called inferred trust that alerts when data is moved to an unmanaged device. And aligning to the zero trust model, the pillars, and zero trust, I mean, the ultimate goal is it's to protect your data. After you do all of your validating, who your, the right person, the right employee, the right device that they're on, the network access, just as important to look at external threats is also internal threats. So you can't really stop with just, okay, this is the employee. Unfortunately, people make mistakes. We're all humans. The majority of the data breaches are, again, from an insider, and most of that is unintentional because of all of these, cloud and cloud shares, and people just make mistakes. We utilize what we call an insider risk management framework. It is recognized by Gartner, and it is around detecting, deterring, and disrupting. And then I want to take it one level further for zero trust, the core pillars. We are a data loss prevention tool, modern approach. So we fall in the data. We also have the monitoring, the risk evaluation, dynamic risk scoring. So you can look at our product 2 ways, or in 2 aspects. The first is when you deploy it, it's like having it's like doing a data exfiltration risk assessment. It's going to see where files are moving that you thought were maybe that data was blocked or that USB was shut down. This gives you this very, quick assessment of where gaps are in your DLP, where gaps are in your CASB, because we're looking at that endpoint. And that is an area that most tools just are not looking at. So let me hand it over to Keith. I want to have him talk a little bit about where the integration aspect of where we fit.
Yeah, so clearly we're playing in the data pillar, right? Because that's where we focus. We're an insider risk management. We're protecting your data. But it's important to really notice how well we fit into the overall zero trust networking architecture. Okay, so as you can see over toward the right, we've got our green boxes where our kind of our core protection, and over there on the left for data for certain. But not only do we take in telemetry and information from these connected systems, like your identity and access management system, like an HR system, to inform insider of who this person is and certain important attributes. Are they a departing employee, or do they have access to sensitive information? That's one area of integration. And on the back end, we have the integration to inform these other systems to do what they do best. So in the case of, say, a SOAR, when insider detects data being put at risk, it knows the full context of that, can inform these other areas, whether that's, again, IAM, SOAR, SIM, EDR, so it can do its thing. So that we'll dive deeper into this as we go through the demo, and then as Shimi takes another level deep on that.
Okay, thank you, Keith. All right, so user model, we are based on the number of users. The licensing model, we're subscription based. Again, just a SaaS only offering, so 12-month terms. We offer volume tier pricing. And Caresoft is our distributor. We've got 30 partners, over 30 partners. We're on GSA and we're on SUE. All right, wanted to discuss who our existing customers are. So from a federal perspective, Department of Energy was our sponsor for FedRAMP. They're our customer. Several of their labs, NOAA, NIH is using us. They're in our FedRAMP environment. And from a customer, from a private sector, customers, a lot of security companies who are concerned around data, IP theft, are using us. Snowflake is a big, we have a great use case on our website, as well as CrowdStrike, but Snowflake, Gigamon, and as we talked about all those ecosystem partners, they're using us as well. So Splunk, CrowdStrike, Okta, Duo, there are customers using us to help with their data loss prevention, their modern approach to an insider risk management solution. Gartner recognized, and there's a market guide that came out in December of 2020, and one we're expecting again for insider risk management in March of this year. All right, differentiators. The biggest differentiator and value to the federal market and to any organization is the speed, the simplicity, and signal that we offer. So we're able to correlate the evidence to give you the ability to make a very quick decision, the simplicity of our solution, it's easy to deploy, and signal. We're giving you high fidelity data events that are just focused on employees who are putting data at risk, whether unintentional or intentional, files moving to untrusted or unsanctioned locations. All right, and I wanted to tie back to the 12 scenarios that you had included. We align to any remote user on a managed device. This would include scenarios 1 through 10. And specifically, our product use cases that we align to is remote working, monitoring. Everybody's working from home to be able to see when somebody's there in their home office. Departing employees, we have specific lenses around departing employees and high-risk employees. We find, I'm sure you've heard of the Great Resignation. That's a great time when employees go, okay, I'm leaving and I'm going to take data. Mirror IT, shadow IT, that's that CASB-like functionality. The DLP policy validation, that's the risk assessment. We're risk assessment. You don't know what you don't know. You think you've got everything from a data exfil, that your tools are good. Bring our tool in. Great for that type of visibility to see where the holes are. Improving security awareness. The response side, that's the second aspect of our solution, is once you realize where your holes are, then you can start forming a response to certain data exfiltration events. And one that is very unique in the area is the fact that we have an instructor module, and that sends a bite-sized training for when somebody does something unintentional or so to quickly respond in a not aggressive way. Just you did something wrong. This is not how it's supposed to, against our acceptable use policies. Data spillage, ability to identify sensitive data that has leaked beyond its boundary, and then in general, just all of data exfiltration. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to hand it over to Keith, who's going to go more in depth around the architecture, the scenarios, and the use cases. Hey, Keith.
All right. Now, we did want to dive into the scenarios and use cases that were specifically asked within this HR committee. And a lot of those had to do with networking contingencies, right? So a user is remote, going after data that's in a different agency, with VPN, without VPN, all these types of things. Now, the good news is, with the way that we're architected, none of that stuff matters. We're agnostic to that. Because of the way we're working, we'll ride on top of whatever scenario you've got there for your networking architecture, which is great, right? You don't have to worry about architecting our solution around what you have. And as that evolves, you got to change things. None of that matters. So we're going to work in just about every scenario and use case that was laid out there. But I do want to kind of go over it and I'll let you know why that is. And that talks a bit to our architecture. So if we're looking, say, down here at the endpoint, right? We've got an endpoint. That endpoint could be anywhere. It could be on your, quote unquote, corporate network. It could be remote. It could be anywhere. We are using 443, so we're encrypted and we're talking over that one port to our SaaS-based service, right? We're also ingesting telemetry from other file repositories, right, through our data exfiltration detector. So that could be something like a OneDrive, a Dropbox, Box, email attachments, any type of a website or location on the web that data could move to and from. Okay, so this is important to note so that we know we're watching all data movement on the endpoint, no matter where it's going, right? We're also coupling that with all the telemetry we're getting from data being used, moved, shared in these connected services. So somebody places a file in OneDrive, for example, and then shares that with the world. We're gonna know that, and we're gonna be able to report on that. So for all of your managed clients, the ones that have Code42 agent or application on there monitoring this, what about the ones that don't? So there are cases, and this was, again, in some of the scenarios and use cases, of a BYOD or a personal device, right? One is an unmanaged device. And we've got that, represented down here. I've got some kind of unmanaged device. Maybe I grab my own personal laptop at home, right? Now, since we're watching both these connected services and on the managed endpoint, we correlate those two. So if we see something move, say, from Dropbox to a device, and we don't see the corresponding event down here on a managed endpoint, we can infer that went to an untrusted device. Now, this is huge because I don't know of any other product that can do this, right? So we're watching this data. We understand who it was that was logged into the Dropbox, Box, whatever. We saw that data move to a device. We know it's not a managed device that we could see otherwise. So we know that we've got an unmanaged device through this inferred trust. Okay, let's jump into a demo here and show you what this looks like. And we'll try to walk through some of those scenarios and use cases. So what we're looking at here is what we call a risk exposure dashboard, right? So all of that telemetry that we've collected from the endpoint, from our data exfiltration detectors, is brought back to our SaaS-based service, analyzed, synthesized, and then delivered back into this administrative dashboard to show you, hey, here's everything that Incydr has determined that looks like data is being put at risk. Now, how do we do that? So we've got a number of ways that we're really getting a full 360-degree view of the full context of data, metadata, and data movement. One way that we do this is through what we call IRIs, or Insider Risk Indicators. And here's a list of them right here. So we're seeing things based on behavior. So we see user behavior here, some things that you may associate with behavior analytics, UEBA type of things. We're also seeing destination, so where data is being moved to. And when we see that, we're going to associate a certain amount of points. So airdrop, +5 points. We see something being dumped to removable media, +6 points. You can change that if you want, but these scores are relative based on all of our experience dealing with hundreds and hundreds of customers. So we can see a whole bunch of them here, in addition to other types of files, file categories. Now, we also couple that with other very important attributes that indicate when data is likely to be put at risk. For example, someone is leaving the organization. We've got a departing employee, a contractor maybe, coming to the end of their contract. Or no, we just know that the people are working on high-risk data or some sort of project that is high risk. So we know that we want to take a closer look. Now, we can populate these, what we call lenses, and that's what we're seeing over here to the right. We call these our lenses, our high-risk employee lens and our departing employee lens. We can populate those automatically. So by way of integration with your HR system, That's usually the first place. Somebody puts in their resignation, it's going to HR, it's going to flip that switch. That is going to inform Incydr immediately that, hey, this person is now a departing employee. Put them in the departing employee lens, take a closer look here, because we know through our own analysis and third parties that almost everybody that leaves an organization is taking data with them, right? Hey, I worked on this, even though it's sensitive. I kind of feel like I own it. I want to have a copy of it. It happens. So we need to take a close look at that. So once we've analyzed this, we've got our top users here based on our IRIs, based on these other attributes that we talked about. I'll arrive at a score. How likely is it that this individual is putting data at risk? Now, there's another way to look at this as well. We can see activity based on destination over time. So we're looking at here the past 90 days of data movement across your entire organization. So we can see all the places that data has been moved to. So you might say, well, you know, we are a Office 365 shop. We would expect a lot of data moving in and out of OneDrive, shared amongst individuals within the organization. And in fact, we can add that to a trusted location so that as data is being moved from one person to the other within your own M365 tenant, we're not even going to bubble that up here. We do track everything. All of that data is definitely being tracked. But since we would consider that normal activity and trusted activity, it's not going to show up here in our dashboard, right? We want to eliminate the noise and just look for the signal. Now, there's other incidents where something like, hey, Dropbox is not even a sanctioned location to move data in this organization. So we definitely want to know when that's happening and how much data is being moved, when it's being moved, who did it, and what exactly is that data. We'll get into that here in a moment. But other things like someone popping in a USB drive and copying to removable media. A lot of organizations that we talk to say, yeah, well, we've got GPOs or whatever that cover that, disallow that, or only allow certain types of that type of activity. We've also seen that once Incydr is deployed in these environments, we still see data being moved to removable media. It's just being missed by their current security controls. Other things very common. Someone pops in an attachment to a personal email, and I'm trying to get the data out that way. We're going to catch that as well. How about something like AirDrop? If you've got Macs in the environment, this is a peer-to-peer protocol that could be happening on someone's personal home network. How could you possibly see that? Things like CASB and other technologies are not going to see any of these things. But because we're on the endpoint, we are going to see it. Okay, let's take a look at one of these a little bit closer and see exactly some scenarios or examples of what we might be able to do. I'm going to look at all of our users because I'm looking for a specific user here to investigate. Okay, got a little bit of a lag here in our environment. Let me see if I can refresh. There we go. And here's who I'm looking for, our friend Jennifer Vang. I'm going to click on Jennifer, and we see this drawer pops out to the right. It gives us a lot more detail about exactly who Jennifer is and what she's been doing. So we see that she is a contract employee. We know that she has access to critical IP. Okay, those are good things. We need to know that to really assess the risk that's going on here. Now, Incydr has analyzed this and come up with a score, and we see some of the IRIs that were tripped here from Jennifer's data movement. And it even shows us the specific files and how this was scored by Incydr. And we can dive into that one a bit deeper. And we're going to do that. Before I do that, I want to show you how we profile every user just by clicking on this button, View Profile. Now, this is going to look a lot like the initial screen that we showed, but this now is looking only at Jennifer, right? So we're looking, who Jennifer is. Again, all this information coming from the integration with your identity and access management system, your HR systems, that's populating who this person is. We see our analysis from Incydr, and we see data being moved, where it's being moved to, the volume, when it happened, are there spikes, are there peaks? Now, one thing pops out to me here in this instance, I see OneDrive. Now remember, if we said we've got a M365 shop, we've got a tenant, we'd expect data moving in and out. And we're going to not even show that. So why is it showing up here? That would be a question I'd want answered. Now we can dive into more details on any one of these things by looking at our forensic search by clicking on this icon right here. I'm going to do that next to OneDrive. And what this does, it puts us into this tab, same console, but just a different tab, forensic search. It allows us to filter, and this is so easy. If you've ever used other SIM type tools where you have to have some cryptic query language like Cousteau or something, it's difficult to learn, difficult to work with. This is very intuitive. All I do is pick the filter and go ahead and choose how specific I want to get. But Incydr's already done this for me. So we're looking for anything Jennifer has moved to cloud storage, in this case, OneDrive. So what have we got? So it shows us when it happened, the names of the files that it's seen, where it's gone. We also have something here that's interesting. We're also able to use other bits of information that might help inform Incydr about, again, risk. In this case, this customer is using Microsoft Information Protection to try to tag files that are classified, okay? Now, if you've used these types of technologies, they're only as good as the implementation, and meaning it's going to miss things, okay? And in this case, every file that we see here is actually classified and has classified markings, but we see there's been a whole bunch of them that are missed, which again is typical. I'm not trying to bash any technology, but this is reality, right? So let's take a look at this. I'm gonna click on this arrow to the right. Now look at all the rich information that Incydr pulls forward. So we've got all this information about how it was scored, what kind of IRIs were tripped, why this was scored by Incydr the way it was, who did it, when it happened, the name of the file. Now here's something really interesting and very unique to Code42. Because we're watching all data movement, anytime any file is exfiltrated, no matter where it's going, we're going to grab a copy of it, encrypted of course, and store it in our encrypted online store. So that, let's say this data, this file here moved. It's no longer on Jennifer's endpoint. It's no longer on your network. It's, well, in this case, it's in OneDrive. What was it? Is that something I need to be worried about? Is it sensitive? Is it critical? I don't know. Well, all I need to do is click on this button here. It says exact match. It pulls down a copy for me as an analyst to look at, to say, okay, well, what was this? And it shows here, well, look at this. I've got classified markings on this. Oh boy, it was missed by MIP, but Incydr caught it. So now I know exactly the data that we're dealing with. The next question, in a case of, let's say, a data spill event, right? I know something happened. It was sensitive. I have to do an investigation. I have to answer a bunch of really tough questions about, did this file go anywhere else? Who did it? When it happened? How did it happen? All of that thing. So here we can answer all those questions right here. So we're also taking a hash of every single file we see. So now I can say, all right, I'm going to take this hash. I'm going to come back to my forensic search. I can use that as a search criteria to say, hey, Incydr, go search across your entire organization and tell me if you've seen this file go anywhere else. So now I can confidently answer that question and say, no, this was the only instance of this file leaving. And I know exactly the specifics around it. In fact, I can answer other important questions of where did this happen? We're tracking, we understand your underlying IP CIDR range. We understand what's remote, what's on network. So we know where this happened. Of course, we know this went to OneDrive. So again, why is it showing up? If we are filtering out OneDrive data movement within our own tenant, why is this showing up? The answer to that question is right here. We're tracking the user's sync name. So if this was jennifer.bang@abc.gov, right? We know that's within the same tenant. We wouldn't even flag it. But this is Jennifer's personal OneDrive account. So here is your shadow IT right here. Difficult to detect with other technologies. Incydr picked it up right away and brought it to our attention. Now, we have all the information we need to make what we call a right-sized response, right? Because Ann pointed out, not everything is malicious. In fact, most of the time, when we see data being leaked, it isn't on purpose. It's somebody making a mistake. It's somebody not really understanding the implications of sharing data this way. And sometimes it's because of your security parameters that are in place. People are trying to work around it because it's too difficult or they got blocked. So they're going to find another way to do it. And this is what happens. So we need to understand, did this happen? And now we can make the right size response. That might just be having a conversation with Jennifer here, or maybe it is in fact malicious, and we need to involve HR or legal. Now, Ann mentioned something about another feature called Instructor. We see a button right up here in the top. This is going to allow us to, when we see something specific like this happen, we can assign immediately this kind of bite-sized training module that goes over this specific thing so that Jennifer knows, A, that we're watching this, and B, what she did wrong and why. And that goes to change behavior. And that we've seen this in real life. So organizations that are using Incydr, over time, not only are we catching these things and bringing them to the attention, but because we're teaching the individuals, hey, this is putting data at risk, and here's why, and here's a way you should be doing this instead. It really goes to change behavior long-term. And over longer periods of time, the whole organization gets much more secure because of it. Now, a lot of times when something like this happens, I've got to document this. I might want to open a case to follow this. Case manager is part of the product as well. I see a button right up here at the top just says add to case. So I can wrap up all of the specifics and the details that Incydr has put together here and create a case. And I'll show you what that case looks like. So here we're grabbing all of the information about who this user is, who they report to, again, by way of our integrations, IAM and others. We have an area to document any steps that were taken by the team addressing this, so we can free-form text there. Incydr automatically appends any file that's associated with these events. And we can dive into the details, the specifics, just like we were looking at a moment ago. So all of that here is automatically followed with Incydr. Now, this is great. This is all you really need to do case management, to follow Incydr risk incidents. However, there's a lot of agencies that say to us, well, that's great, but we really have a ticketing system that we use. We're using Jira, we're using ServiceNow. Can you feed that system? And the answer is yes. Again, more integrations now on the back end. Once Incydr finds something like this happens, we can automatically give all those details over to your ITSM, create a ticket, and go through a workflow that's over there. Perfect. Or how about this? What if we want to feed this information into some sort of a SIM or a SOAR? So the SOAR can take steps to mitigate whatever we're seeing here. So let's just say this was the malicious exfiltration of data. Incydr picks it up in all of its details. It feeds it over to your SOAR so that can run a playbook to do whatever it does best. And Chimmy's going to give us some examples of that right after my demo here, because that really talks to the full solution and how we fit into the overall umbrella that is zero trust, right? It's not just about identity. It's not just about data protection. It's about everything. And our tight integrations there are really what really kind of stands out for a solution like this. So it doesn't matter what you're using, we're going to be able to hook into it. We're going to be able to allow those systems to do what they do best. Okay, let me show you another example here. I'm going to pick on the guy that was at the top of the list here, Sean Cassidy. We've got a whole bunch of critical events here. We see a whole bunch of IRIs that have been tripped. Let's see what's going on here. So we see this one, in this case, Sean is actually a departing employee, and we know he's moving to another organization. Maybe it's a different contracting firm, contracting to the same organization. There could be some IP and critical things that are involved here. We definitely want to know about that. Incydr, again, has scored all of the activity that it sees, and we see those scores here. We can jump into what those are. And again, we're looking at the specific files that were triggered. We see something like this one here, vacationphotos.ping. Well, if I were looking at this, maybe another tool was tripped, I would look at that and say, oh, well, Sean's leaving, he's just cleaning up his laptop. That's a harmless file. But Incydr is pointing out some really interesting things here. We see something flagged here called file mismatch. We're going to dive into what that is and how Incydr picked that up. So again, we have the whole profiling information as we looked at with our other end user. In this case, we're going to look at Dropbox because this isn't even sanctioned for this organization. So let's dive into that and find out what's going on there. So now we're seeing all of the things that our friend Sean has moved to Dropbox. And we see this file again, familyphotos.ping. And we can see how it was scored by Incydr. Let's jump in and find out a little bit more about that. So we see this thing called file mismatch. And what Incydr has picked up, even though it looked like an image file with the extension .png, we are looking at more than just the extension. We're actually looking at the header of the file itself. And we know that this, in fact, is an archive. It's a zip archive. It's not a PNG file. So it looks like perhaps there's some data obfuscation going on here. Well, how do we know for sure? Well, we've got this exact match, right? Even if this file is no longer on this endpoint, we can still go and take a look at it. We're going to pull that down, and we're going to see, here's the file right here. And because Incydr told me that this is a zip archive, I changed the extension back to zip, and I unarchived it. We see here, this is not image files at all. This looks like it's some sort of a code. So now we've got data obfuscation and data exfiltration. Again, if I want to go and look to see if this file ended up anywhere else, we can do that by way of our hash. We know where it happened. And the fact that this went to Dropbox. So now we may have a different response to this one, because this actually does look like it's malicious activity. So we might have to say, you know, let's involve HR and legal and follow up with this incident that way. Now, last thing I want to point out to you here is we do have alerts. What's different here than other type of alerting type of security software, like a SIM or something, where you're just absolutely buried in alerts all the time. Remember, we're only looking at data being put at risk, and that's it. And because we're so good at separating the signal from the noise, you're not going to be buried in alerts. And when Incydr tells you something happened, probably a good idea to take a look at it. So if I click on one of these things, you can see how easy it is to kind of triage these things. So Incydr tells us exactly, you know, what it found here, who did it, when it happened, and the specific files that were potentially at risk. Okay, so that is an overview of how Incydr works, and just a couple of examples of what we do there. So if there's any questions, please let me know. And if not, I'm going to stop sharing and hand this to Shimmy to go into even more detail around the integrations, because that's critical when we're talking about a full zero trust implementation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Keith. Thanks everybody again for joining us today. As mentioned earlier, Ann nailed my last name. My name is John Schimmelfinney, conveniently known as Shimmy. John is a mouthful here at Code42. I'm the Director of Business Development and Strategic Partnerships here at Code. My team manages our external ecosystem. And Keith talked to you a bit about how we weave in and out, but we do have a mantra here at Code42. The ecosystem is the product, and the product is the ecosystem. And why is that? Well, we've got some specific things that we look through, and this is a bit of our methodology. I'll take you around the wheel, but I'm not going to read the wheel for you. I trust y'all. What we're looking to do here at Code is really be that next-gen DLP or that Incydr risk management solution. As Keith honed in on, we do something very, very well. We watch for file behavior, file movement, and ultimately file exfiltrations from your environment. Why is that important? Well, DLP after about 2 years tends to fall on its face. Why? Your decentralized data, or even in your case, maybe some centralized data, rules change, aspects change, new products get deployed, etc. But the compliancies and the focus behind it and classifications behind it don't always migrate when the data does. Code42 is here to watch of that. We are in the middle of this wheel. Why are we in the middle of this wheel? Keith also alluded to this. He's getting a gold star for today, folks. We're not a silver bullet for Incydr risk or Incydr threat or next-gen DLP. DLP isn't even the end-all be-all for DLP. Again, we want to seamlessly slip into your stack. We are an API-first organization from an external standpoint. Our data is highly extensible. Our product is very fluid. And we want to help you answer really these 5 key points with our ecosystem. The first two, Keith really honed in on in terms of where we were looking in the demo. First, understanding where data is at risk. These are identity solutions, Ping, Okta, AD, Azure AD, etc. Privileged with folks like CyberArk and HashiCorp, human capital management solutions. And some of you folks may have different solutions for your internal employees, your badged employees versus your contractors. We want to work with all of those. Why? Because where is data at risk? It's not on the machine by itself necessarily. It's on the machine with the human attached to it. So first we want to look for that data movement, and then we want to associate that back to that user, give you the context of who these folks are. Why? Because in a ZT environment, hooking in with these types of solutions allows us to tap into the least privileged concept as well. Being able to pull privileged access off folks, leveraging our PAM integrations, being able to deprovision users, leveraging our identity solutions, being able to interact with those HR management or HCM systems based off of what we're seeing. We want to provide all of that, give you the user and employee and contractor heuristics of the folks that are part of your network. Then, as Keith talked about, the pure play IT, the cloud-based IT, the shadow IT, the Bluetooth, the OneDrives, the removable media that can easily make its way onto and into your endpoints and obviously into the internet as well. We want to highlight where their data is flowing. We want to bring the back to the users, and we want to make sure that you're aware of where those data points are, particularly the untrusted data points that critical government data is moving outside of the organization, outside of the agency. Now, the rest of the wheel, this gets a bit more security centric in terms of what we're doing. From a number 3 perspective, we want to hone in on those SIM and analytics and UEBA type integrations that you've deployed. Why? Because we understand that your security teams aren't necessarily fully robust. Nobody's are. There's typically a 21-to-1 model that we've heard floated around out there where you need 21 IT people for even one security person, which leaves most folks really, really shorthanded in these SOC teams and these security teams. So we want to make sure our data is fully extensible and we can alert to you in the system that your teams are using today to prioritize threats around your environment. We want to bring this in there, and we've got a fantastic story with CrowdStrike, who's a customer of ours on our website, where they're able to leverage their alerts from Falcon, their deployment with somebody like Splunk, and our insider data to really determine in near real time whether the incident they saw on their product on Falcon was really a risk. Did data leave the environment? Who's going to tell them that? Incydr and Code42 are. And we want to move around the wheel. We want to help you respond. We want to do this as automated as possible. We partner very, very well with market leading SOAR organizations out there, EDR, and obviously identity as well. Not only does it begin with identity and identifying those users, but when there's an incident, there's 2 things we need to take care of in insider risk management. Making sure that user is locked down, quarantined, or removed, making sure that endpoint is locked down, quarantined, or removed from the environment. So it's no longer having the ability to transmit that data, and that human no longer has the ability to access that data to potentially transmit it out from an additional third-party site. And then we wrap all this up. We work very, very well. I've got a counterpart on my team that works with advisory partners, folks like Booz, Deloitte, Accenture, Grant Thornton, et cetera, to help agencies and our customers, if you're using them, better understand how they're trending over time with insider risk management. Are you affecting cultural change? With 98% of events being oopsies, somebody sending data to some place they didn't know they couldn't, are we addressing that from an educational standpoint? From those departing and high risk or potentially malicious employees, are we taking swift action? What do the SLAs look like in terms of response time? And are we engaging with that ecosystem to respond in near real time? Why do I keep saying in near real time? Every logo up on this screen right now can consume our data within 10 seconds of the API firing. So as that employee, contractor, or constituent within your user base, within your agency is finished taking their sip of coffee after offloading some data to an untrusted location, you're made aware of it, you can begin mitigating it, and ultimately providing right-sized response to it. We have quantifiable metrics that when our customers hook in with things like EDR or with SOAR, they can take their insider risk investigations from 24 quantifiable hours to 10 minutes. Why 10 minutes? Well, our API started firing and providing mitigation within about 10 seconds. So again, that person's just finished sipping their coffee, and we can already start locking down the environment. And when we talk about 10 minutes, well, It takes a little bit of time for our API to configure and prepare that document for your analyst and IR responder to take a look at it and really address the case. So that 10-minute time frame is the amount of time it takes for our document to populate. In that 10 minutes, we've already started mitigating that user. And if you've got the right solutions in place, and we've got more partners that are loaded on this slide right now, I just want to make everybody go too cross-eyed this morning. You're able to automate a lot of that. Take the hands off keyboards, remove the human error and human lag when it comes to next-gen DLP or to insider risk investigations. And it's important to do so because that mean time to resolution needs to be shortened while these folks are still badged, while they're still in-house, while that data has been recently touched and addressed. Why? Because we can shorten the time that this data is out in the wild. We can begin mitigation aspects involving legal, involving HR, and involving other LEO agencies if we need to, depending on the type of breach. I'm going to take you through a few slides here about really a little more in depth about how these core integrations work. So what we talk about is ET environment, again, users, right? We want to be able to work with those users. We want to be able to enforce least privilege where we can. We want to be able to remove access where we can, where it's over accessed or overindulged in the environment, and ultimately stop data leaks caused by users with trusted access. And how do we do that? Well, we work with a variety of partners to not only bring that data, user data in on the front end, but work either natively or with our SOAR partners to begin that response process, to be able to deprecate access if they're a departing employee that is actively exfilling data. They may not be needed to be removed from the environment entirely right off the bat, but they may not need access to all of the things they had, particularly if we catch them exfilling that environment, exfilling that document from the environment. We want to enforce conditional access. Again, we want to alert on this. In something like Okta, we're able to communicate with Okta via SOAR or natively to drive response. We can put the user in an Okta user group. So if that Okta user group has the correct permissions wrapped around it, a departing user that has offenses could have automated capabilities put into place to reduce their access. We want to help you identify those risky behaviors. Who's sending data where, particularly to those untrusted domains, and how are they doing it? Are they sending pure play files? Are they renaming those files, as we showed with Sean Cassidy? There's a variety of contexts that we can help surface to help determine intent. And at the end of the day, we want to make these as automated as possible. So that front end grab on those users, bringing all those in, understanding their hierarchy, their manager, what their roles and responsibilities really are, come from a variety of these identity solutions. And again, I don't have any HCM logos up here, but the Workdays, the ADPs, the Bamboo HRs of the world, et cetera, all fit right in there. From a SIM perspective, it's all about reducing alert fatigue. We've seen a number of incidents out in the wild that take almost a year or a year plus to resolve. That data's gone. Hey,
Alex.
And what we want to do is, with our SIM integrations, again, alert you in near real time. Within 10 seconds of that event firing, put this alert within your level 1 analyst or your level 2 analyst or your level 3 analyst, depending on how your SOC's organized, and who has access to manage and investigate insider risk incidents. We want to cut down that alert fatigue. I only want to send you the data that says somebody took something and put it somewhere else. I don't want to necessarily inform you of all of your departing employees. You have Workday, you have ADP, you have Bamboo HR that can help you do that. I want to alert you on your departing employees or your high risk employees that have put your agency's data at risk. And I want to reduce that complexity. I want to keep it very, very clear. I want to be able to say these uploads went to a personal G drive. These uploads went out via USB. These uploads went out via Bluetooth or AirDrop, etc. To be able to help you prioritize that risk and understand where and when these events are taking place and ultimately what data is moving. And like every SIM, tap into their reporting, tap into their compliance, tap into the log management piece so that we can help show how you're improving risk posture over time with the technology. I talked a bit earlier about advisors and consultants, but this is where we can leverage our technology and our reporting to help roll that up, to help the agencies and the sub-agencies really understand if they're improving over time on insider risk and insider threat investigations. We work with a number of market-leading solutions, and a number of those solutions are not only partners, they're also customers. So you may hear a lot of them talk about their insider threat offerings while we service them internally with their insider risk management programs. Finally, the kit and caboodle, the 1,000 ways to skin the cat, the old SOAR integrations, right? What we're looking at here is really automated insider risk management. This is where we can take that non-traditional P that we have from the next gen DLP environment, where we're not providing inline blocking, but we're providing near-time resolution. And with our extensive playbooks that we've got with some very market-leading vendors that are out there, we can really slice and dice in terms of how we're working with this. And not only, again, are these partners, they're also customers. They're eating the dog food, right? And the important thing about eating the dog food is the fact that they're dealing with the very same problems you at your agencies and your counterparts in the commercial world are dealing with. They need faster response, but they can't just say set it and forget it because it's a SOAR. They need to understand that complete context. So with our SOAR integrations, very much like our SIM integrations, we're able to import all of that and upload all of that exfiltration data, all of the stuff around that case. Why? Because who's typically using SOAR? An incident responder. So again, we want to present this evidence. We want to present these files. We want to present this chain to those incident responders so they can have context around what is the next decision they have to make. We provide automated response. Insider risk management, though, isn't an easy solution, right? So we want to make sure that those analysts, those incident responders, understand all they can around and have all the context around that threat so they can take those appropriate next actions. And we want to reduce as much human error as possible. So we've worked with these partners and our customers that are leveraging these integrations today to make sure that we're removing the appropriate hands off the keyboards when we need to, and that we're engaging the appropriate stakeholders throughout the organization, the agency, folks like legal, folks like HR, folks like compliance, because these events can have different levels of severity. The higher level the employee, the most likely they are to have more sensitive data, right? And as we scale up, we want to make sure that these incident responders are addressing each thing in particular, providing that right-sized response in our 3 response buckets. And I call them out there: contain. What do we do with contain? Well, we can quarantine, we can remove, we can deprecate user access. We can really affect things on the endpoint and the user there. Resolve. We're going to take a deeper investigation. We may pare back some privileged access. We may work to understand what that user is really doing. We may put that user in the high-risk lens at this point. Why? Because there's some interesting data movement that's going on that's not necessarily out of bounds, but we're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to work to resolve this over time because it could just be an issue that they need to be better educated on what policies are within the environment. They may present risk because they are not well educated, because when they joined the organization or when their contract started, they didn't fully read the T's and C's that you sent them about policy compliance. We want to make sure that if that is the case, you can automatically inform them, whether via our instructor product, whether folks like Know-B4 or the other security awareness solutions that our customers are tapping into via SOAR, so that they have those options, they have those levers to pull where they can contain an endpoint or a user. They can resolve the case by taking additional steps, leveraging HR, leveraging the employee's manager, et cetera. And then ultimately look at that larger environment, the 100% of us, of all humans who have access to an endpoint, the internet, and every removable slot on our endpoints. We want to make sure that we're well educated to understand what the risks are, not only within the policy compliance aspect that we've all signed, but also really from a data governance perspective. How do we, as users, really affect that environment? And real quickly, we'll go through the walkthrough on what we do with our SOAR products and really how it works. Because again, shortening that MTTR, being the NCAP of a TTP perspective, we've got that evidence. We can tell you who sent what, where, and what that file physically was, what they renamed it from, what the chain was, where else it was touching the environment. That can take a lot of work. We want to automate as much of that as possible. So when we first detect something, Incydr is going to create the flag. Just for sake of an argument, departing level employee with proprietary source code level access has exfilled something from the environment after giving notice. We can automatically send that Incydr risk indicator up into a Palo Alto, into a Resilient, into a Splunk SOAR, or the many other options that are out there in the marketplace to begin some front-end mitigation. We can start beginning by forcing things like MFA. We can begin by quarantining the endpoint. We can begin simply by emailing their manager to saying that there was an incident and they sent X file off the network. Right? So we can really bring in a people, process, and technology approach, leveraging SOAR tech. And we want to provide your users, your incident responders, with the ability to deeply investigate that. So not only can we surface that data with an Incydr, we can make that extensible into your SOAR product today. And we can not only take that one incident, but Incydr is fantastic. That agent sitting on that endpoint. Not only do we see this one incident, but we can now go back in and that analyst can go over time 90, 180 days back to see what other data has left. Were there low-level spikes? Was somebody trying to get something out of the environment and keeping it low-key until they put their notice in? Were there periodic times where it was spiking? They've been taking data all along. We want to be able to highlight that. And then once we've done that investigation, once the analyst has completed the investigation, determine right-sized response, very easy actions via SOAR to either close out the playbook if it's a non-issue, or make it much more extensible, involving a whole variety of EDR, XDR solutions, involving all of the ITSM solutions, involving the identity, the privilege, the identity governance solutions that we can, and also those education pieces. Because again, containing, resolving, and ultimately educating your user base and around that incident is the fastest way, most efficient way to remediate that insider event. I will get off my soapbox now. Please let us know if you have any questions. We are happy to help y'all.
That was awesome. I just want to say before we get into the Q&A, I loved the energy that the three of you brought to this presentation. It was very intriguing. So now we are going to start with the Q&A. Chris, you can keep recording. I like to keep the questions in the video. I think it's a nice little added bonus. So if you have any questions for our awesome Code42 team, please ask them now. You can put them in the chat. You can come off mute, whatever you feel comfortable with. Does anyone have a question?
Sure, I have a question. So if I understood you right, you do have, well, I don't know if it's a question or statement or both. You do have the ability to delineate between, for example, like Microsoft's Office 365 account. So if I'm using my personal one, you can flag that as, and not flag it when I'm using my corporate one. Is that a safe assumption?
That's correct. Yes. And not just that, when we're able to do that and differentiate between repos, for example. You've got developers that are putting code into a repository, one that's designated for the organization, and then one all of a sudden, same repo, maybe it's a Git, but it's a personal repo. We're able to tell the difference there. So there's a number of things that distinction is very critical, right? But OneDrive being a big one that, yeah, we absolutely do that.
Anyone else?